Cash Flow Diary Podcast, episode 528.
Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Cash Flow Diary Podcast, the podcast that teaches you insider tips, tactics, and strategies for creating leverage streams of cash flow into your life. Learn from top-performing entrepreneurs, business owners, investors, and thought leaders from across the globe as they share their secrets to success. Like what you learn on this and other Cash Flow Diary podcast episodes? Go to learninvestingnow.com and sign up to receive powerful tips and information that will help you succeed as an entrepreneur and investor. Now, here's your host, investor, entrepreneur, business owner, educator, speaker, author, and master facilitator of Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow game, Jay Massey.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Cash Flow Diary Podcast. I'm your host, Jay Massey, and I'm glad that you are here today because we are going to take a trip down memory lane. And more importantly, we're going to take a trip down a type of real estate that we often don't talk about here. When it comes down to it, though, we're all out there looking to build our cash flow. We have a place where, you get up, you go to work, maybe you work at your home, maybe you actually are building your business in, an office, or maybe you're doing some co-working. But ultimately, when it comes to the real estate world, we all need a place to live, work, play, or lay. And that's exactly what it comes down to. But today's guest has been doing real estate for quite some time. And by quite some time, I mean 62 years. With that being said, you're probably wondering, who are we talking about? Well, today I have with me none other than Welcome Wilson Sr., and he is the chairman of the board of the Welcome Group, and they tend to specialize in manufacturing and other industrial facilities in Texas, and currently comprise over 4 million square feet of space. Now, the story is great. The history is huge. The lessons are deep. And as he himself would say, he has had the privilege of doing so much work for so many years. I can't imagine what you and I are all about to learn. So here's what we're going to do today. We're going to make some time. We're going to be ready with that pause button and hitting that note so that you can take some notes, because we're going to learn lots of lessons about how to build our own business as we listen to Welcome Wilson Sr. Welcome. How you doing?
Doing fine, thanks.
I appreciate you taking the time to be here. It means a lot. Now, this being the first time that you're here, I have to ask you the same question I tend to ask everybody else. Are you ready?
Yes.
All right. I tend to look at today's entrepreneurs a lot like yesterday's superheroes, like Batman, Robin, Wonder Woman, etc., because I tend to think that entrepreneurs and superheroes have a ton of things in common. For example, if you think about as an entrepreneur, occasionally I can envision myself wandering around town, using our products and services and saving our customers one sale at a time. And occasionally, yes, I'm probably wearing a cape at that moment. Also, though, like a superhero, an entrepreneur has a beginning. For example, if you think about Spider-Man, there was a time where he was just a kid going to school, doing his thing, and then, taking some photos. But one day he gets bit by a spider, discovers that he has a superhuman ability, and now he has to choose whether to use this ability for good or for evil. So, my question to you is as follows. Before forming the Welcome Group, before even serving in the Korean War, before, working with the likes of former President Eisenhower and Kennedy, before doing all the things that you have done, what we want to know is, who is Welcome Wilson?
Well, I've had about 6 life-changing conversations in my life. And the first one was with my father when I was 17, and I thought I was going into the Army during World War II. And he said, in order to succeed in business, you've got to have guts and determination. Now, he didn't mean the guts to get into a fight. He meant the guts to make a pitch to make a pitch to somebody you've never met that's highly in your favor, be able to keep a straight face and look them in the eye. And I would say that one talent has served me well for many, many, many years.
Got it. So I'm just curious, what was it like the first time you tried to make such a pitch? Were you excited, nervous? Was Dad's words running through your head?
Well, yes, he felt like being a salesman was the highest calling.
Really?
Yes, because if you're a salesman, you can always get a job. You can always get a job. The first significant pitch I made in business was when I talked to a multimillionaire who I barely knew into spending several $100,000 in cash to buy 300 acres of land in Galveston, Texas, and then turn around and sell it to me for $1 down. And, with payments every time I sold something. So, and the pitch was not easy. And it took me, I guess, a year to get him to do it.
Wow.
And then I made a pitch that I needed to put in streets and utilities because we were putting in a subdivision. So I talked him into guaranteeing my note for $250,000 unsecured at the National Bank of Commerce in Houston. And he signed the back of the note, and the bank did not even ask me for a financial statement.
Wow.
But I would say that's one of the more significant pitches I made. But both were successful.
So let me ask you this question then. There's a number of people who are listening who they're not asking anywhere near as much as you just, said. They're not asking for investors to commit anywhere near as much. They're not asking for buyers to commit anywhere near as much. But yet I know that they're having some challenges opening their mouth and actually getting those words out. They're probably wondering, where did the courage come from for you to do such a thing?
Well, from my father. My father just convinced me that I needed to be able to do that. And I graduated from the Brownsville Junior College in 1944. And then take it back, 1946. And I came to the University of Houston.
Mm-hmm.
Well, my father believed in self-reliance.
Mm.
So here's what he told my brother and me when he dropped us off at a Army surplus house trailer, which was the only student housing at the time at the University of Houston, and no bathroom. And he said, "Boys, I paid your first semester's tuition. I paid your first month's rent on this house trailer, $10. And here's $50 each. And whenever you boys need anything, just call me up on the phone. Whatever you need, call me up on the phone and I'll explain how you can get by without it."
Oh, yes.
We never heard from him financially the rest of our lives. And the point is, I was 18 years old. My brother was 20. I got a job at selling advertising for the student newspaper at the University of Houston. And I scrambled a lot. We didn't eat very well, but we made it. And we became self-reliant.
Wow. So you from that state, why? And I'm curious. I mean, there were lots of things that you have done, in your career and in your lifetime. Why did real estate make sense to you?
At first, I was going in to the oil business.
Okay. That almost makes sense coming from, Houston.
But I wasn't going to look for a job. I was going to be the operator.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So Bob Smith, the oil man in Houston, and he was the one who made the loan for Jamaica Beach.
Got it.
That I mentioned. Bob Smith came to me and said, or called me in and said, look, I think the oil business is over for the independent. He said these wells cost $30,000-$40,000 each to drill. And he said an independent just can't raise that kind of money. Well, he was wrong, as T. Boone Pickens proved. Mm-hmm. The master limited partnerships and all other kinds of financing. But anyway, so he thought I ought to go in the real estate business. He was the largest landowner in Harris County, which is Houston. And he had about 30,000 acres, including some very, very valuable land. It's now called both sides of the West Belt and the best of both sides of the West Loop in Houston. So he convinced me to go to become in real estate. Now, he didn't want me to be a developer. He wanted me to be an investor. But if you have no money, you can't be an investor. So I became a developer.
So I'm hearing a trend of it sounds like either you're seeking out advice or people are voluntarily giving you advice and you keep following it. Is this something that has earmarked your career, you seeking out individuals and asking them their thoughts on what you should do next?
Not really. I was listening to him because he had all the money.
that totally understood.
And also I worked for him at the time, and he was the 800-pound gorilla.
Got it. So I think many would say today that you're one of those 800-pound gorillas. What would you say to that?
Well, probably so. I don't feel like one. By the way, I have never met anybody who was an entrepreneur that ever thought they were rich.
Really? That makes me feel better, because that is definitely not how I feel. And it's interesting that you say that, because there can be this thought process that you should feel that way at some point.
No, it doesn't happen. My company is now worth $77 million. And I know because we just brought in a new partner. And that was the valuation put on my equity in my company. But an entrepreneur never thinks he's rich. And that is my experience. For example, I know 5 or 6 billionaires in Houston.
Yeah.
And so there's always somebody that has more money.
This is true. This is true. Let me ask you this question, because I know there's a number of entrepreneurs who are looking to change their station, and coming from a place that you're describing where, your dad is paying for 1 month of rent, and just the situation that you're describing, do you think it was an advantage that you did not already inherit or come from a family that had any sort of means, so to speak?
Well, you learn from scrambling.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been scrambling all my life. So I would say the necessity for scrambling made a contribution in my situation.
So what is it? I mean, and I'm asking partly for myself and also because, you've already been through this. I look at my children, they're age 22 down to 8 right now. I have 4. And I think very similarly to you, I think, having to fight for things and not having them handed to me is kind of important, but to the process. But I don't want to handicap them, but at the same time, I don't want them to feel like I don't care or I have abandoned them or I'm not helping them in some way. How did you handle that with your children?
Well, I paid for everything. So I did not carry on my father's legacy. And my 2 sons are in the business with me. Mm-hmm. They're my partners now. And the company is actually owned by some trusts that I set up about 25 years ago that benefit my wife and 5 kids.
Got it. Interesting. Totally understood. Now, when you got into real estate and developing, I mean, some would say that if you're going to do real estate, that's probably one of the riskiest plays, simply because it's very speculative over time. I'm curious to know, like, there's been a couple of downturns during your career. And I know that there are some investors who are facing a potential downturn or feel like a downturn is coming in some way, shape, or form. What advice would you give someone who's either A, buying and holding real estate or flipping real estate or building real estate if they're anticipating a downturn?
I used to be in the apartment business.
Mm-hmm.
I built 6 apartment projects over about 3 or 4 years, and they're still standing, and one of them is 100% occupied, and it's been that way 50 years.
Wow!
But I don't own it anymore. That's why we never sell anything anymore, because I have nothing to show for it. The mortgage would have been paid off twice, but it always seemed that I started construction of an apartment project in a boom and opened in a bust. Where it seems that way.
So what lessons would you say you've learned in that situation of just either how to prepare for it, like knowing, let's pretend that was happening right now. You were building an apartment complex and you're thinking, okay, we're going to be opening and it's going to be in the middle of a bust. What would you do knowing what you know to prepare for that?
Well, first place, I would bring in some partners that had some money. And my first apartment project, I wanted a mortgage expert, a operations expert, a promotions expert, and others. So we had 8 partners. Each person had 1/8 of the ownership.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when the contractor went busted during construction, and I'm out there every Friday writing checks to subcontractors, nobody was with me.
Huh.
So I learned that if somebody only owns 12.5%, they're not going to be willing to write big checks when you need it. So for that reason, only have partners that have enough at stake to where success is imparted to them.
Well, I think that's important. I've often told and counseled some of our students and customers that, partnerships are challenging or can be challenging. And one of the reasons I do very, very few of them is because the cap table, the risk is lopsided because of, where someone might be in their journey, etc. So how did you learn to find partners that you could work with and become the welcome group you are today? All right, everybody. Thanks for listening, and I'm glad that you are enjoying what you are hearing thus far. But here's one of the things that's really important. One of the most important things that you can do is get started. One of the things that I've said before, and I say again, once you get started, stay started. But more importantly, there can be lots of roadblocks to getting started. So what we're going to do is we're going to remove one of those roadblocks for you and make it a little bit easier. Because the thing that I don't want to stop you is thinking, do I need a local number? How about a long distance number? Or should it be 800? How on earth am I going to make that happen so that people can contact me as I'm out there building my business, making my cash flow grow? But most importantly, understanding that it doesn't have to be difficult. Many of you may know, but if you don't, there's a company out there by the name of Grasshopper. And what I want you to do is I want you to go over to trygrasshopper.com/cashflow diary. Grasshopper is the entrepreneur's phone system. It works like a traditional phone system, but requires no hardware to purchase, no software to install. It's just the number that flat works. So if you are out there building that distributed workforce across many different locations, it's a way for you to still go out there and make your number be unified, simple, easy to use, something we've been using for quite some time. So again, go over to trygrasshopper.com/cashflow diary. Now, let's get back to the rest of the story.
Well, the first place, the ones who did not perform, I just bought out for some nominal amount, and like $10,000 or something, and they were happy to sell.
Got it.
But I learned that you got to have partners that have enough stake in your situation that you can rely on them.
So if you were approaching a transaction today, when you say enough stake, what does that look like?
Well, we just had a company from New York invest $300 million in our company.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly they have a big stake, and they'll bring our portfolio up to $1 billion in value. Right now, it's about 450 million. But this will bring it to $1 billion in value. And you have to have $1 billion worth of real estate in order to get respect in America.
That's funny to hear you say that, because I know many people listening right now, you have their respect, sir, without having $1 billion of real estate. So, but I got that. So when it comes down to it, and I'm just curious, if you were talking to someone getting started today who was wanting to build a real estate portfolio or was wanting to become, something more for their family the way that you have, is there something in today's economy that you think gives them an advantage, or is it still guts and determination is what it's going to take?
Well, they have many advantages today. For example, when I first got in the business, banks were reluctant to make a loan on raw land. And it was unheard of for a bank to make a loan on raw land. So and now, of course, banks are happy to make the loan. So I would say it should be easier today than it was in my time, because banks are always there looking for business. And right now, the banks are coming around I'll never forget during some downturn, the bank turned down my loan, and they said, "Don't worry, welcome. As soon as this recession is over, we'll be around kissing your ass again, trying to get your business."
Yeah. Okay. It does feel that way, that when you need the money, the banks won't give it to you.
Yeah. Let me tell you a story about cash flow.
Yes, please.
In the 1960s, it took $20,000 a day to keep my company rolling. An extra $20,000 a day. So every day I had to raise $20,000 to keep the company going. And so one day I was at the health club, the President's Health Club in downtown Houston. And I bumped into a friend of mine who was president of Brown and Root. Brown and Root is one of the biggest engineering and construction companies in America. And it's now called KBR. It's Kellogg Brown and Root.
Mm-hmm.
But so I was talking to the CEO, Herb Frensley was his name. And I said, "Well, Herb, how's it going?" He said, "Welcome, it's going fine. If I could just solve this cash flow problem at Brown and Root." And I said, "What do you mean? Brown and Root doesn't have a cash flow problem. I have a cash flow problem." And he said, "Welcome, it takes $750,000 a day to operate Brown and Root."
Wow.
And I've got to raise that cash every day. And for a week, I felt better, only having to raise $20,000 a day. Apparently, regardless of how big you get, you still have to work with cash flow. One of the reasons that we concentrate on what we do is because of cash flow. For example, right now, we do only single and tenant industrial buildings.
Okay.
Okay, we have 4 million square feet, as you mentioned, in 87 locations in Texas, most of them in Houston.
But how did? Oh, go ahead. I just wanted to know, how did that help with cash flow? That seems like that a single tenant situation sounds like that would not help with cash flow as much as a multi-tenant situation would be.
Wrong.
Okay. I'm here to learn.
Let me tell you, I did shopping centers.
Yes.
I did apartment projects. I did hotels. See, the hotel business, your leases are 1 day at a time.
Right.
1 time. In apartment business, you open and you have rented nothing. So you're scrambling. In Houston, we had what we call the Army of Occupation. And that is, it was a bunch of airline stewardesses who would move into your apartment project so you could meet the occupancy required by the lender. The Army of Occupation. Anyway, single tenant industrial buildings. See, sometimes we have a 10-year lease, sometimes a 5-6 year lease. So, and the building was designed specifically for what they needed. We did a lot of build-a-suits. We still do.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
We have a $25 million build-a-suit going on right now, where a German company, when we finish construction, is going to lease at a high figure a facility west of Houston, in the suburbs of Houston, in Katy, Texas. And the point is, their credit is good. They're successful in business, and we have them on a 12-year lease. So, for example, in about 4 million square feet today, we're 96% occupied. On a multi-tenant deal, you have shorter leases, and you always have cash flow problems.
Got it. So if I hear you correctly, what you're saying is that the stability of the long-term tenant and a number of them solves the cash flow problem.
Yes.
Got it. And if you can secure the right type of credit tenant for, obviously in this case, longer than a year, but multiple years, and in this case, decades, you can reliably build with less stress is what I'm hearing as well.
Yes. Now, it takes more capital, but thanks to the early days, we have more capital now.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And there's nothing like success to attract capital. Correct.
Got it. Totally understood. So let me ask this question. The industrial world is something that currently is very foreign to me. Is there something particular about industrial buildings that attracted you in the beginning? Like why those? I mean, you've built all kinds of things, like you said, apartments and hotels and everything, but you settled on industrial.
Let me tell you, I developed 3 office buildings downtown.
Mm-hmm.
2 of them are 22 stories.
Wow.
In downtown Houston. So we've done everything, including hotels. The Marriott Corporation has 7,000 hotels in the world today. When they had 5 hotels, I developed number 6 in Houston, Texas, out by the Astrodome. But back to industrial, we were in the office building business, and a broker brought us 15 industrial buildings. So we made an offer to buy the 15 buildings. And the owner said, you have to buy my construction company as well, my development company.
Hmm.
The name of the company was GSL. Gustav S. Levy, GSL. That was the owner's name was Gustav Levy. So I said, well, what do you want for the company? He said, well, $1 million. I said, well, what assets does it have? And he said, well, it owns a Xerox machine, but it doesn't work. He said, but we have goodwill.
Right.
And he had 3 or 4 buildings under construction. And so I first went to and got somebody else to buy the business, which I wasn't interested in, so that we could buy the 15 buildings. Then one morning at 4 a.m., the Xerox machine at my house went off, and it was a letter from him canceling the deal.
What?
So I called him up the next day and went over to see him. And he said, I don't like who you're selling the company to. I want you to buy the company. So we negotiated for a day or so, and I said, here's what I'll do. Instead of paying you $1 million for the development company, I'll pay you $1.2 million. But the promissory note is going to say it's payable only out of profits of the development company. He said, I'll do that in a heartbeat. So that got us into the industrial development business. And we've been in it. That was 25 years ago. We've been in it ever since.
I find that interesting, considering, that it wasn't even something you were in. It sounds like you didn't even want to be in.
No, and at the time we had a couple of subdivisions in Houston and other things we were working on, and over time we stopped doing everything else, and now we do only single tenant industrial building. When I say industrial, I don't mean warehouses. I mean manufacturing plants, expensive construction.
Yeah.
For example, our buildings have many cranes. They have extra electric power.
Yeah.
Sometimes the shop is air conditioned. And a warehouse costs about $45 a foot to build. Our buildings are well over $100 a foot.
Wow. So, and you found it beneficial enough to actually stay in the business. What was it that kept your attention? I mean, I see that you get into the business not necessarily looking for it, but you chose to stay. There was a conscious choice there.
Well, the minute we saw that the cash flow problem was solved,
Got it.
that's when we stopped doing everything else we were doing, because we had long-term leases.
Got it.
And with adequate credit on the lease, all you do is sit back and collect checks every month. We don't change light bulbs. We don't mow the grass. Triple net leases, and all we do is pay the ad valorem taxes, which the tenant furnishes us the money to do that. Pay the insurance, and then again the tenant furnishes the money for that. The taxes and insurance, and we're responsible for structural repairs. For example, the roof and the foundation.
Yeah, totally understood. Man, you have done quite a number of things. As we wind down here, let me ask you this question. I'm curious to know, why is it important to you, to even come on shows like this? Why take the time to do it?
Well, I've written a book, and it's the name of the book is called Always Welcome. 9 decades of good friends, good partners, and mostly good deals.
Mostly good deals. I like that.
And the book is highly recommended. It has a 5-star rating on Amazon. It's available on Amazon. Always Welcome by Welcome W. Wilson Sr.
It's awesome, sir. I definitely appreciate you taking the time to tell the stories and share, because there are lessons in that we all get a chance to learn, and if you weren't willing to share them, they could be lost. But now, you've taken the time here, you've put it in the book, and everybody knows how to get over to Amazon for sure and pick up a copy. And I just want to be the first to thank you for taking the time to share your knowledge, your wisdom, and your insight here with us today at the Cashflow Diary.
You bet.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know what time it is. It's time for you to move at the speed of instruction. What does that mean? That means get over to Amazon. Get a copy of Always Welcome, because you just heard from Welcome Wilson Sr. And it's not often that we get to hear from such a seasoned individual. Ladies and gentlemen, I know that you have the guts and the determination. So now it's time to go out there and do it. It's been fun talking to you guys today. I look forward to talking to you soon. Until next time.